So I want to be clear. The violence that unfolded just blocks from the White House was heartbreaking. 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard who signed up to serve our country were targeted in our nation's capital. And I think I speak for all of us, both sides of the aisle here, when I say our hearts are with the families of Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf and the family of Specialist Sarah Beckstrom. And we continue to pray for Staff Sergeant Wolf's recovery. I am heartened to hear the progress that he's making. But the response to their horrific ambush shouldn't be to attack one another or to seek to further divide our country. It should be one where we come together and double down on the values that make our country truly great. Values of service, of community, of diversity, and opportunity. Instead, we're seeing from members of the Trump administration and even some of my colleagues here in the Senate, there's a response that's truly repulsive. They're exploiting a tragedy for political gain, even when it means turning their backs on many of the Afghan allies who saved American lives overseas. Now, in preparing for today, my office has heard from veterans who've shared stories of the heroism and solidarity of many Afghans who served alongside them, and asked that we not condemn the many for the inexcusable act of one person. And I know there's a number of veterans here in the audience today. Could the veterans and the battle buddies in the audience please stand for a moment? Thank you. And I thank you, we thank you for your service and for being here today to support the allies who stood shoulder to shoulder with all American service members. So today, let's set the record straight about what's really happening. Across the nearly 200,000 who resettled in America, each and every Afghan refugee had to complete multiple rounds of extensive vetting. That's fact. Vetting not just before entering our country, but even after they arrived. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that the withdrawal of our forces and evacuation of our allies was perfect, but under incredibly difficult circumstances, the United States government came together to respond so that we would not leave our allies behind. This effort involved numerous agencies from the intelligence community, the State Department, Health and Human Services, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, including Customs and Border Protection. Together, they set up vetting at the military bases where people were sent before being allowed to come to the United States. And here's something that my Republican colleagues won't tell you. If someone didn't pass vetting there, they did not leave those bases to enter the United States. We also know that vetting took place at safe haven military bases here in the United States, and that's all before the vetting that takes place when someone goes through the immigration system with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And in the case of the CIA's so-called zero-unit fighters, the vetting went even further because Afghans were vetted by our intelligence community before they even joined the unit. So to suggest that Afghan refugees aren't vetted thoroughly is a pure fabrication to fit a tragic act of violence into a false narrative by this administration. And sure enough, in the case of the shooter from last fall, it's clear that this was not a failure of vetting. It was a failure of counterterrorism, with professionals diverted from their critical missions to instead carry out mass deportations. And it was a failure to support a veteran by pulling back resources that normally support the resettlement process. So let me be more specific about this case. Reports indicate that long before November 26th, Mr. Lakhonwal was displaying an alarming change in behavior. This is public. He was isolating himself for long periods in a dark bedroom, retreating from his English classes, his job, his family, only leaving to set out on long solo road trips. A family member of his reached out to the authorities to request a move for Mr. Lachenwall, citing his isolation and fear for his safety after being assaulted and requiring hospital care. Mr. Lachenwall reportedly even reached out to a CIA-run group chat for zero-unit veterans asking for help, but went unanswered. So the combined failure of counterterrorism teams to see and intervene on these clear red flags, and the failure of a system that dodged away Mr. Lachenwall's access to case management and mental health support absolutely contributed to the horrific tragedy that unfolded in our nation's capital just before Thanksgiving. The investigation into the shooting is obviously ongoing, and it would be irresponsible for us today to speculate about motive or cause, but we can't say for certain that it did not occur because Mr. Lachenwall was not vetted. But I also want to make one other point as I close. For nearly 2 decades, American service members relied on our Afghan allies in some of the most dangerous situations imaginable. On the battlefield, as interpreters, and as members of the CIA's zero units. So let's make no mistake, they too are veterans of America's war in Afghanistan. And I want to take a moment to thank the chairman of the Immigration Subcommittee for his past consistent support for Afghan SIV recipients, not only welcoming them to Texas, but by joining me in introducing and passing a bill to speed up the immigration process for Afghan interpreters, urging us all to, quote, make sure these heroes are able to efficiently immigrate to the United States to start a new life. I couldn't agree more. The idea that today we would punish all Afghan allies, or all immigrants for that matter, for the sins of one is outrageous. But sadly, that's exactly what's happening. And I urge you all to reject that kind of scapegoating and cynical politics at this sensitive moment for our nation.